In the last episode, we've talked about monk Xuanzang farewelled Emperor Tang of Tang Dynasty and left, hence the journey to the west began. So who is this monk Xuanzang? And also, as a regular monk with no particular powers, how was he able to break the seal of the Buddha himself and set Sun Wukong, the great sage equal to heaven, free? Well, let's find out. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm Jay the Storyteller and I'm going to go through the story of the famous Chinese novel Journey to the West with you guys. Today we'll continue from where we left off in the last episode. You know how the journey to the West began as monk Xuanzang was selected to be the scripture collector. But as I mentioned in the previous episode, Xuanzang was actually a disciple of the Buddha himself. So you might be wondering what's going on here. Why wasn't he with the Buddha? Why he had to go all the way to the West to get the scriptures? And that's what we'll be looking at today. You know, who is Xuanzang and what's his story? And also, how did he meet the famous monkey king Sun Wukong and set him free? Well, without further ado, let's begin. In a journey to the west, Xuanzang, aka the Tang monk, was actually a disciple of the Buddha. His name was Jin Chanzi, the gold cicada. Many years before the journey, he kinda provoked the Buddha because he disagreed with the Buddha's doctrines and he wouldn't listen to the Buddha's preach. So yeah, he was kinda rebel, just like Sun Wukong. As the result, he was cast off Mount Lingshan as a punishment, to live and reincarnate as a mortal. And after 9 miserable lives, in his 10th life, he was selected to be the scripture collector, to be in charge of his project Journey to the West. And by the way, in his previous 9 lives, he was eaten by the same Yaoguai, the sand monk, who later joined the journey again. And those are his very scars around his neck. And we'll talk more about this in the future episodes. But you know, he was the invisible one who frequently got ignored. So who knows, maybe in the future I'll forget to make his episode. Nah, I kid the sand monk. We will love him because he was the most reliable one. But seriously though, we'll talk more about him in the future. Right now, let's just focus on Xuanzang, the Tang monk. In this life, his 10th life, he also had a kind of miserable life at the beginning. Before he was born, his father, Chen Guangrui, was supposed to be the governor of a state, Jiangzhou, and also he happened to marry the beautiful daughter of the prime minister at the time. Such a life winner, right? But on the way to his new appointed job, he was killed by the boatman and pushed into the water. You know, the crew got greedy on the way and they wanted to take his beautiful wife. And the wife was carrying a child, you know, Xuanzang. So in order to protect her child, she had no choice but to obey the thug. And the thug even stole Chen Guangrui's identity and became the governor that he was supposed to be. After Xuanzang was born, his mother knew that the thug would kill him, so she had to send him away. But she was being watched closely by the thug's henchmen, so she didn't have much of a choice. She wrote down his story on a piece of cloth with her own blood. Then she put Xuanzang and the blood cloth in a little wooden basket and pushed them into the river, hoping that he'll be rescued on the way. Fortunately, he was rescued by the monks along the way, and the old monk brought him back to their temple, Jinshan Temple, and he even gave him this name, Jiangliu, meaning river flow, you know, for obvious reason. And that's how he became a monk. Yeah, as you can see, this life wasn't going well for him either. Poor dude. Anyway, as Xuanzang grew up, his master gave him the message that his mother left, so that he could know who he was and what happened to his parents. Very soon, Xuanzang found his mother, and the mother and son finally reunited. In the novel, Xuanzang actually went to his grandfather, you know, the prime minister, and the emperor was furious that he sent 60,000 people to go after this thug. Yep, 60,000 people for one thug. Damn, man. That's a lot of people. Anyway, the thug got what he deserved. And even more, Xuanzang's father, Chen Guangrui, miraculously resurrected from the river. Yeah, he just came up the water like that. How was it even possible? Well, when he was still alive, there was one time that he saw a fisherman holding a golden carp. Compassion got the best of him. He bought the carp from the fisherman and just let it go. And that carp turned out to be the Long King of that river. I mean, don't even ask me how he got caught at the first place. I don't fucking know, man. He was a Long King. That's what the story needed. Maybe the author told him to get caught. Who knows? Anyway guys, after Chen Guangrui was killed and fell into the river, the Long King saw his body. He was like, oh my god, this is my lifesaver. What happened? Why is he dead? I gotta save him. He used a very valuable vessel, the preservation orb, to keep his body fresh. No, I mean to prevent his body from going bad. That still sounds weird. But you get the idea, you know, to preserve his body so that he can have a chance to resurrect. Now, if you have played the game Black Myth Wukong, this item should sound familiar. Yeah, it's one of the curios that we got in the game, the preservation orb. It's an item that helps with people's resurrection, to keep the body fresh, or whatever you want to call it. It's funny, in the game we actually got it near a grave. Now we don't know whose grave it was, but my guess is that Zhu Bajie put the orb there just in case that something happens to his wife, the violet spider, and with the orb she can have a chance to resurrect again. Alright, Bajie, way to take care of your wife. But anyway, back to our story. The Long King used the preservation orb to preserve Chen Guangrui's body, and he even retrieved his soul from the underworld, and that's how he was alive and reunited with the family. And that was the story of Chen Xuanzang before he became the monk master and went on the journey to the west to retrieve the Mahayana Buddhism scriptures for his emperor. Now, I've talked about the scriptures and the cause of the journey to the west in my previous episode, so if you want to know more about that, go check it out, guys, and you'll know more about the journey and why it began in the first place. Before he left for the journey, this old monk, who was actually Bodhisattva Guanyin, gave him this kasaya of ever spark that was sewed with the finest silk and countless jewels, which made it all shiny and glorious. What's more, it carried the blessing of the Buddha and could repel all evils. So really, it was the dream kasaya of all monks. And this particular kasaya actually led to trouble later on in the journey. Black myth players, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And don't worry, we'll get to that part very soon. Anyway, that was the story of monk Xuanzang and how he became the scripture collector and began the journey to the west. If you watched the previous episode, you'll know that Buddhism is behind the whole journey. And one can even argue that the whole journey to the west was a plan of the Buddha to spread to the east. And that's why there have been many conspiracy theories arguing that this journey to the west was a complete scheme. But again, stories are something that you should have your own opinions about. And I am simply a storyteller who delivers the stories, and it's up to you to make that judgment. And don't jump to conclusion just yet, guys, because there are a lot more stories ahead in the journey. Alright guys, a quick intro here. Xuanzang actually had 3 names. Chen Xuanzang, his birth name, Tang Sanzang, given by the Emperor Taizong. In Mandarin, Sanzang meaning 3 books of scriptures, representing the 3 books of scriptures that he was going to retrieve. And the emperor granted him the name of the empire, Tang, as his family name, which was a very high honor. So, Tang Sanzang. And lastly, the name he was most known of, Tang Sen, the Tang monk, which is pretty self-explanatory, right? I suppose no further introduction needed. But anyway, let's continue. As Xuanzang left for the west by himself, it wasn't easy for him because it was a dangerous world with all sorts of supernatural beings that could just easily eat him alive. And back then, he was just a regular monk with no particular powers. As you can imagine, he was never supposed to make it to the west all by himself. It takes simply a tiger to end his journey right there. And that's why Bodhisattva Guanyin selected Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, the great sage equal to heaven, who was being punished and sealed under the Five-Finger Mountain by the Buddha because he defied the celestial court many times and even fucked up the celestial palace. So yeah, he was a badass rebel, but the Buddha was just too OP. He eventually got captured and sealed beneath the Five-Finger Mountain formed by the Buddha's hand for more than 500 years. Until the day that Xuanzang came, Xuanzang was like, "You can talk? What the fuck?" That Wukong told him about his past, why he was sealed beneath the mountain. And also, by Bodhisattva Guanyin's order, "I'll escort you to the west. Just let me out, master." Even though the seal was planted by the Buddha himself, it was easy to break it. Xuanzang only had to remove the talisman on the mountaintop, and the seal was gone. And then Sun Wukong was able to break out the mountain with his own strength. Yeah, he had incredible powers. Wukong kept his words. He knelt before Xuanzang and called him Shifu, the master, and the two began their journey to the west. But we all know that there's always going to be problems in a new team. So even though they were all happy and excited at the beginning, the two very soon had a huge quarrel. They encountered a gang of thugs. Now, the TV show didn't quite show this part, but in the novel there were 6 of them, and their names were very interesting. They matched the 6 roots in Buddhism exactly. Craving eyes, fuming ears, hubris nose, envious tongue, grieved body and freed mind. And Wukong killed them all. There have been some theories arguing that this implied that Wukong had achieved the purification of the 6 roots, which is the ultimate goal in Buddhism, to not be restrained by your 6 senses and find your true self, and ultimately go beyond life and death. But anyway, that's just a guess because the thugs' names matched the 6 roots exactly. In the novel, he did kill these people for real, but killing is the #1 prohibition in Buddhism. That's why monks are vegetarians. So, as a faithful monk, Xuanzang was beyond furious. He was like, "You foul monkey, why did you have to kill them? You could have just captured them and bring them to the authority. Not to mention you're now a monk. why are you doing this? Then Xuanzang just went on and on and on, which is like the only thing he did in the journey. He just won't stop nagging. But as you can imagine, Wukong was a proud character. He was the Monkey King of the Mount Huaguo, and he even called himself the great sage equal to heaven. That later got approved by the Celestial Court. And no one had ever dared to talk to him and blame him like this. So finally, Wukong had enough of it. He was like, Master, if it wasn't for me, you're already dead. I simply killed some thugs that are beyond saving. Even if I spared them, they would just keep doing the bad things and harm the innocent people. I killed them to protect the good people. How was I wrong? But Xuanzang didn't care. He still went on and on with his lecturing, which finally pissed off Wukong. He was like, fine, I'm sick of your bullshit. You go on to the west on your own. I am out. Then he just flew away. But after talking to his rich neighbor, the East Sea Long King, he realized he was wrong. He should have controlled his temper. And not to mention he was only able to regain his freedom because of Xuanzang and the journey to the west. So, as a decent person, a decent monkey, he should at least finish the journey and complete his duty of protecting Xuanzang. So he decided to go back. On the other hand, after Wukong was gone, it was difficult for Xuanzang to continue, as he struggled at every step. Very soon he met an old lady who was kind and caring. She helped Xuanzang a lot, offering him foods and stuff. After hearing Xuanzang's problem, she took out a beautiful head and told Xuanzang, here, when your disciple comes back, put this on his head and chant the spell and he will be obedient. Xuanzang was like, okay. Wait, what? Turned out that the old lady was actually Bodhisattva Guanyin. She knew about the two's quarrel, so she came here to help. Then Wukong came back. He apologized. He was like, I'm sorry, master. It won't happen again. And then, even though he was feeling guilty about it, Xuanzang tricked Wukong to wear the hat. And the hat was actually a powerful vessel. It was called the tightening band, a tool to control individuals. The Buddha gave it to Guanyin before she departed. And there were actually 3 of them: the golden band, the tightening band, and the binding band. Real nasty stuff. They all work in a similar way. Once they are put on, it's impossible to remove them. And upon triggering, it can cause insufferable pain. Then Wukong was like, motherfucker, you set me up. So Xuanzang had to chant that spell. And the pain was so great that it could immobilize Wukong. Some of you thought this was his crown, as he was the Monkey King. It does kind of look like a crown, but now you know it's not. It's the band that they used to control Wukong to make him obey. Pretty nasty, isn't it? So, without a choice, Wukong had to accept it and be obedient, and the two moved on. One day, the two went past a place called Yinchoujie. All of a sudden, a long came out and ate Xuanzang's horse. Xuanzang was like, without a horse, how am I supposed to make it to the west? Yeah, he cried. And he cried a lot in the journey. And Wukong couldn't hear it anymore. He was like, suck it up, Shifu. Stop crying like a little bitch, man. It won't help anything. Stay here while I go subdue that foul long and bring the horse back. Then he went on fighting the evil white long, and he won pretty easily. The long couldn't match his power, so he fled back into the water. Now you might be wondering, Sun Wukong could fly. Why didn't he just carry Xuanzang and fly to the west and get everything over with? Well, the most important reason is that the Buddha kind of forbids any type of cheating. Xuanzang had to complete the whole 81 trials before he was qualified to get the scriptures. And also, according to what Wukong said in the book, as immortals, if they carry mortals when they fly, it will be extremely heavy and it's almost impossible to do, which is why Wukong never carried Tang when he was flying. It makes sense, right? If flying was an option, there wouldn't be this book, and I wouldn't be sitting here making videos trying to get famous and make money, right? And Wukong's only weakness happened to be underwater battles, so he stopped chasing. Conveniently, Bodhisattva Guanyin came. Wukong was like, hey Bodhisattva, why did you set me up with this tightening band? It causes so much pain. Guanyin was like, well, you kinda asked for it. Why didn't you just obey your master? Then Guanyin told Wukong that she put the white long here. The long was actually the 3rd son of the West Sea Long King, but was punished by the Celestial Court because of a minor mistake. He was getting whipped and was gonna be executed. He begged Guanyin to help him, so Guanyin selected him to be a member of the journey again, to escort Xuanzang to the west. She convinced the Jade Emperor to pardon his crime so that he can make it up for it. Eventually, the White Long knew that Xuanzang was the scripture collector that he was waiting for, and his salvation depended on the journey, so he knelt and called Master. And then he transformed into a white horse, because he ate the last one, and they began the journey together. So as you can see, the white horse shouldn't really be called the white horse. We should just call it Sunshine Rainbow Little White Horse instead. Dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-da. Sorry guys, couldn't help it. But as you can see, Tang was someone you don't want to mess with. Even though he was just a weak mortal monk, his disciples ain't playing around. I mean, look at them. Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, the great sage equal to heaven, one of the most powerful beings in the world. And even his horse was a celestial god, a lone prince. And not to mention there will be 2 more disciples who were celestial gods as well. And we'll talk about them in the future episodes. But even with a crew like this, they still ran into a lot of dangerous situations and dangerous enemies. So who are those enemies? And how could they possibly harm this game that's basically all gods? 欲知后事如何，且听下回分解。